Hello and welcome to the Escape Podcast, your source for all good things in Universal movies. I'm Josh.
And I'm John. Join us as we explore the vast reaches of science fiction, fantasy, action-adventure, and beyond. Today on our milestone 10th episode, we're going to be discussing the 1988 American action film that Entertainment Weekly named the best action movie of all time, Die Hard.
Did it?
That's what somebody said, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that one. I did not know that one.
Yes, sir.
So how you doing, John?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself, Josh?
I'm doing well. It's nice to have you back.
Nice to be back in the Escape Podcast.
Thank you.
It's, it feels like it wasn't that long ago that I was here, but then in some ways it seems like I've been away for light years.
Yes.
Usually, at this point in time in an episode, I think we would maybe say something about maybe what we've been watching or thinking about in the world of movies and sci-fi and action, etc.
You are correct.
Well, I would like to talk about seeing Rogue One.
Okay.
Now, I know that you and Dave both have sort of touched on this recently in episodes, but if I could, I would just like to briefly add my thoughts.
You may.
I personally really enjoyed Rogue One. I know a lot of people have been kind of hard on it. Some people said had a lot of problems with the CGI. A lot of people had big problems with the story. A lot of people said they noticed that it had to have a lot of reshoots. But personally, I mean, even though maybe I noticed some of those things, none of it distracted me or bothered me. I really enjoy Star Wars. And so even maybe if, there was a really bad CGI character at the very end of the movie, or if there was just some things that is like, I wish I could have known a little bit more about this character or that thing or whatever. I really enjoyed the movie personally.
Yeah, I didn't not enjoy it. I did have some little issues with it, but I do want to see it again, kind of digest it a little bit more.
I would like to see it again. I don't know. There was like I said, so much of the criticism that some other people had. I personally didn't have that criticism. Maybe it's just because that for me, when I go to watch a movie, I set aside all of my disbelief, if you will. And I can look past usually a bad CGI or maybe something weird with the story or whatever, and I can just enjoy a movie for what it is.
I think you can do that for some movies, but I think other movies they're big enough franchises where you kind of can't help, or at least I can't help, but go a little deeper in what they did right and wrong or what they should have done. I'm just interested in seeing what it was more like. I heard it had more of a documentary feel, a little more shaky cam kind of stuff going on, which I'm not into shaky cam myself, so I'm glad they didn't do that. But I also heard it was more depressing. They said they had to lighten it up a little bit. It was too much of a downer film.
Which is funny because a lot of people still said that they thought it was a downer film in some ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody died.
Well, everybody good.
Yeah, I mean, the main cast, the good guys, they all died, which, was fine. It was very self-sacrificing. But, like, the two guys, the blind guy and the guy backpack gun guy, I didn't really feel like there was enough on them. I never felt like I really knew their thing. That's just one thing.
They can do their own. They can do a movie just about those guys.
They could.
I think they could.
Sure. I mean, they want to.
So what about you, man? What have you been watching and checking out?
Honestly, not much. I got nothing. No, nothing. I haven't watched anything really. Nothing new in theaters. I want to see Arrival still. I'm still interested in seeing that.
I just recently watched the Alien movies, all of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I really enjoyed all of them put together. If I were to take them apart and view each movie individually, 1 and 2 were definitely the best.
Agreed.
3 was by far the worst in my opinion, and 4 was okay, but not nearly as good as 1 and 2.
It's been a while since I've seen them, but the last time I thought I mean, again, not that 3 is good, but I think I disliked 4 more than 3, but I didn't like either of them really.
I'm hoping to check out Prometheus really soon, and then I know that there's a new one that's going to be coming out which is a sequel to Prometheus.
But yeah, acts as a prequel, I think, to Alien.
Yeah, it's still a
Alien
prequel.
Covenant, I believe.
Yep. It's still a prequel to the first Alien movie,
Mm-hmm.
which so is Prometheus.
Right.
But it's a sequel to Prometheus, the new movie will be.
Okay.
And there's also in the works a new Alien movie, a sequel to the Alien franchise as a whole. From what I understand, it's going to have Sigourney Weaver reprising her role as Ellen Ripley.
Really?
And it's going to be the wrap-up of the Ellen Ripley saga.
Interesting. Had to keep an eye out for that.
Absolutely. So, Die Hard. Today, we're doing Die Hard.
We are. And we were going to do this earlier, but things didn't work out, and I wanted to release it for Christmas. I thought that'd be kind of fitting, but it didn't work out.
Well, it's always kind of like Christmas when I get to hang out on the Escape podcast.
Is it?
Yeah, we're pretty celebratory guys.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always a celebratory mood here out in the deep, vast reaches of far space.
Yes, it is. All right. Shall I start?
Yeah, hit it off.
Okay,
buddy.
I have some trivia here. So, Die Hard, 1988. It has a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was directed by John McTiernan, and he's obviously the same guy who did Predator, our last movie. Must be destiny.
I thought about that myself.
Yes. Obviously stars Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman.
Yep.
There's some others, but no one really worth mentioning.
No.
I don't think so. Okay, so the film is based on the novel Nothing Lasts Forever, which is a sequel to the novel The Detective from 1968, which also became a movie and starred Frank Sinatra. In the novel, the McClane character was named John Leland. Hans was named Anton Gruber, and the ending, just like in the movie, had Gruber falling out a window, only in that version, when he catches the wife's watch, he actually pulls her down to her death. So that was changed. Sinatra and Willis basically played the same character, just the character's name was changed. They actually technically were in a movie together, 1980s, The First Deadly Sin. Now, Willis was just a non-speaking extra that walks past it, but just kind of interesting. This is Alan Rickman's first film. Prior to this, he had only done stage and some television roles. This originally was meant to be a sequel to Schwarzenegger's 1985 movie, Commando. However, Arnold turned it down, as well as Sinatra, Stallone, Richard Gere, and Burt Reynolds. I thought that was kind of interesting.
It is interesting.
The Nakatomi Tower is actually the headquarters of 20th Century Fox. The company charged itself for rent, and they used the non-furnished floors, which just worked out perfectly.
Yeah, it was still under construction.
Right. They even actually added studs like that over there to make it look even more like under construction, which I thought was kind of funny. Bruce Willis wore rubber feet for the scenes where he runs across all the broken glass. Bruce Willis is actually more German than some of the German terrorists. He was born in Germany to an American father and a German mother.
That's quite
I thought that was, so yeah. In fact, only 5 of the 13 terrorists were actually German. Alan Rickman kept flinching, apparently, at the flash in the muzzle of the gun. They had to cut away often because he just couldn't get used to it. The scene where Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman meet was unrehearsed to create a better feeling of spontaneity between the two actors. In the book, Nothing Lasts Forever, the standoff lasts 3 days, but they changed it to a one-night thing in this one. The film was also turned down by De Niro. I guess I should have said that before. Whoops. Oh, wow. It is said they spent over $130,000 on glass.
That's
and
insane.
I never realized how much glass is broken in this film, but it's all over the place. It's crazy. For the end scene, Alan Rickman agreed to do the 25-foot fall onto an airbag. One scene, one shot. They said they were going to do 3, 2, 1, go, and release him on go. However, when it came time, they released him on 1. So that look is actually, it's a surprise because they caught him off guard.
Which was excellent thinking.
Yeah, and the last one is just a little funny thing. The Blinking Dead Man. The first guy that John McClane kills, the blonde guy, they say that when he's in the elevator with the Santa hat on and Hans flips his head, you see him blink. But he's supposed to be dead.
Well, I mean, they do say that dead people can flinch or whatever. There's still those nervous twitches that are happening as everything's shutting down.
All the guys I've killed, I've never seen them blink, and I've killed many of men.
I usually don't pay too much attention to their eyes after I kill them. So
I just look at them, I kill them, and I just toss them over, the dumpsters and other various hidden spots. I mean,
Space dumpsters.
well, I mean these walls right here filled with. There's like 5 guys right here.
Yeah, yep.
And I never saw the blink, but that's just me.
Yeah, well, I mean, once you get to this point in time, they usually don't blink.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I wanted to talk about here, the start of the movie.
Yes.
I really feel like the start of the movie with, here's John McClane. He's a New York cop coming to L.A. to be with his wife, who's been now working at this job in L.A. for a while. He didn't come with her.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember how, 6 months maybe or whatever, 9 months.
Yeah, I think it was 6, but I could be wrong.
How much time had spent, but by the time she left New York and he stayed behind because, he really didn't think this was going to work out for him.
Yeah.
So here he is. He's hopping into a limo that was sent by the Nakatomi Corporation.
Yes.
To go and see her at her job's Christmas party.
Correct.
And I love this limo driver. And he's just so you don't really find anything about him to be extraordinary or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a character for that time of the film from point A to point B. And I love the interaction between him and Bruce Willis. He's a young African American kid. And then here's Bruce Willis, this older white guy, and the young guy. He says he was a taxi driver,
mm-hmm.
and this was his first time driving anybody in a limo. So he's real talkative, because that's what he's used to from driving taxis. Here's Bruce Willis, and man, he just wants this kid to shut up. And I think it's hilarious because finally when the kid decides to shut up, the kid puts on rap music for Bruce, to jam out to, so to speak, on the way, which at that point in time, it's highly unlikely that Bruce Willis's character would have been into rap music.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought that was sort of funny. But it turned out, he at the once they finally reached the destination, and he sort of could tell, Bruce Willis had told him just a little bit about himself, and the kid was intuitive enough to realize, hey, this might not work out so well when he goes up to see his wife, because they're having some problems. So, he says, hey, give me a call. If you don't need me, then that's fine. But if you do need me, I'll stick around and wait for you.
Right.
I thought that was cool how that started off for them.
Yeah, you definitely get the sense that he's a fish out of water. He's from New York. He's middle class. He's not a businessman. He comes to L.A., and he's basically just trying to get his wife to come back home. They got into a fight, and, what they say that she basically is trying to make it on her own, so to speak, and he was kind of feeling like she wouldn't be able to do that and come crawling back, and that's where they are. But yeah, you get this real sense that he's not quite familiar.
Well, that's pretty funny because it reminds me of my own dad. My dad went to California when he was in the military.
Okay.
And he said that's what it was like for him. He could not wait to leave California.
Yeah.
But watching that stuff on Die Hard with John McClane at the beginning, he's so realistic. I mean, everybody's kind of been there when they've been the uncomfortable guy in an unfamiliar area, unfamiliar setting, at a party that they're maybe not into, with people all around them that are just so vastly different from them that, it's just like, well, where do I really fit into any of this?
Yeah, he's definitely the everyman.
Absolutely.
I said this when I did Indiana Jones, that they did it with Indy as well, but he's caught with his pants down, in a sense, his shoes off, but, he's not prepared for this. He does have his training, but he's basically in a totally different state, has no backup. He's just a normal guy. He gets hurt, he gets beat up, the whole shebang, And, I'm sure he doesn't want to do what he has to do, but his wife is up there. So I think otherwise he probably would just pull the alarm and just hid if he could. Just if his wife wasn't literally there, he probably just would have tried to do what he can to get their attention and just kind of lay low and let the cops deal with it.
I never thought of it quite like that. I always kind of felt like that he was, even though, yes, he was a reluctant hero,
Mm-hmm.
I still felt like if he had been in the supermarket and somebody pulled a gun out, he's going to be the guy that saves the day for those people, because that's just his natural instinct. As a policeman, and maybe just as a guy,
Mm-hmm.
To have that protective instinct of others. But, you mentioned Indiana Jones, and you're right, that they did do that some with Harrison Ford. And And you know how much I love the Indiana Jones movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're some of the greatest films ever made, one of the greatest movie franchises of all time. I just think that maybe this John McClane character, especially in the first Die Hard movie, is the best portrayal of the reluctant hero that I've ever seen. I mean, he's so we've used the term every man, and when John McClane is in those situations, I've been there, I can see that. But then he's in some of these situations where his life is on the line, and it's like the fear that he is expressing in his face, in his voice, his emotion, the adrenaline that seems to be pumping through him at some of those moments that are so death defying, is very realistic. The portrayal is so realistic, in my opinion.
And then on top of that, they put him without shoes. Which,
Yeah.
how vulnerable is that? I mean, I was thinking when he's running upstairs, like cold concrete, all the floor, unfinished floors, and like metal staircasing, like, and you're running, like how much that must have hurt just even before the glass issue. Speaking of shoes, I had one thing to say. So, the first guy he kills, he tries on his shoes, right? They don't fit. Okay, great. But later, when he first starts talking to Hans, he had like 2 or 3 other guys that he had killed, but they never show him try to wear that guy's shoes. Because that's when he was like found the C4 and the cigarettes and all that. They never. You think, hey, I need some shoes. I would have tried. I would have had to just squeeze my feet into some shoes at that point. Obviously, that would take away the tension, the drama. But if this were real, it's a little nitpicky. But
At the same time, though, I mean, when you're in that situation, you've got all that adrenaline that's pumping, all these different crazy thoughts that are going through your mind of possible, terrible things that could be getting ready to happen. Maybe at some point, shoes is not going to be the first thing that
I
comes to your
guess,
mind.
but he was digging through the guy's pockets to get the lighter and everything else. I would just think you would.
But at that point, he's thinking from a tactical perspective, of what's going to be what can I find useful that will help me, obtain or achieve my objective, in beating these guys. Not so much about
I just
his
think
own
the
comfort
shoes
at
though
this
would have
point.
to be a big part of that. I mean, it's beyond just comfort. It is kind of tactical. I mean, I would think at that in that situation, if you don't have shoes on and you got to fight people, I don't know. That's just me.
Well, yeah, boots are a great weapon. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but yeah, if you got to beat up some guy, you're almost.
It's a vulnerable place.
Yes.
I mean, goodness, you get your foot stepped on, that's going to be a painful experience right there. I never thought of that as being something, but it's something that you obviously noticed. So good eye.
So I want to talk about the realism of when he fights the first guy. Like, you notice how long it took him to kill that first guy?
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, they just like, he's smashing them through the walls. They had to fall down the stairs and all that stuff. A lot of movies, it seems like it would be this quick thing, but they kind of took their time showing like how sometimes people don't want to die easy. They die hard. Yeah.
So we're talking a lot about John McClane, but I want to talk for a second here about the bad guys, particularly Hans Gruber. Such a fantastic villain. He's not so bad that that you hate him or that you're really terrified of him in a sense, but he's clever bad. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was to that point. I was going to say he's calm, he's cool through all of it. He's never losing it, and I think that makes him scarier. And it seems more calculated. It seems like almost nothing's catching him off guard. He has a plan B and a C and a D and etc. for whatever comes his way. Like, he's really thought it that much out, and I think that makes for a better bad guy. I guess originally they were going to have him wear like tactical gear, and he said, no, he should be wearing a suit. He should have this refined look about him, and it makes him stand out, but also makes you kind of get a little bit of his personality. He's talking about his education and hobbies, about models and various things. It kind of shows what kind of villain he is.
Yeah, absolutely. And he stands out so much from the grunts that he has that are working for him. One of the weird villains there for me is the African American villain. He's all these other guys that work for Hans Gruber are German, You know, how did that guy get in there?
Well, there was one Asian guy, and I think there was another guy. He was a white guy, but he wasn't German. He had a sound almost a little more southern accent. But I think he was just a tech guy. He needed somebody that knew how to break into that system. So yeah, I mean, they weren't all German, or at least even supposed to be.
It just seemed a little odd to me, unless maybe they've been a crew for a long time that have been planning something like this, maybe even worked on smaller but similar operations in the past.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you consider them terrorists or thieves?
It's funny that you would ask that because they don't consider themselves terrorists.
Right.
Even though, obviously, well, okay, terrorism has a definition.
Okay.
Which is to use intimidation and scare tactics for a political or religious or ideological goal.
Mm-hmm.
Their goal is neither political, religious, or ideological. It's merely thievery.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, they're not terrorists. They are thieves.
Okay.
However, in a way, they are terrorists. Just their actions are very terroristic.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also what's funny is, again, they say they're not terrorists, but then at the end of the movie, when the credits roll, they're listed as terrorists.
Yeah. Well, I never thought anything of it until I heard other people speak on that. To me, I always just assumed they were or thought of them as terrorists, I should say. I just was curious what you thought about that.
Yeah, that is a funny point. Another thing, too, is among the hostages, I find that there is one hostage in that building that you just about hate more than you hate any of the terrorists.
Ellis?
Yes.
Hans, Booby, I'm your white knight.
I mean, seriously, that guy is such a slime ball.
Yeah.
And it's it's weird to root for the terrorists at any point, or to root against a civilian who's in a hostage in the situation.
Right.
But that guy, man, you really root against him.
Well, they did that. There's a few of those guys. There's Ellis, Dwayne Robinson.
Well, yeah, okay.
There was that guy. There was the two FBI guys. There was the reporter guy, Thornburg, or whatever his name is. There's a few of those kind of jerks in the movie that you just don't want,
Well, now that you're bringing that up, this is a good point for me to go into this little thing. The movie is so good as far as the realism aspect of it. There's so much realism. I think that's one of the reasons it's such a great action movie. However, one of the big things that is very movie-like, that's not very realistic, is how stupid every one of the good guys is except for John McClane and Al.
I did actually feel they made Al a little annoying at times. I didn't have a problem with him until they were kind of having him say stuff like, "Oh, they're shooting at the lights," and I don't know. I just kind of, like almost like he had experience in that these kinds of things. I just found him a little annoying at that point.
I never thought of Al as being annoying. I found it just so weird how all of his superior officers, all the guys from the the terrorism squad or anti-terror squad, the guys from the FBI, every single one of them were absolute morons, and they came in as jerks and made every situation worse, it seems. Why was it that everyone was so incompetent besides John McClane and Al? I can't understand that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
obviously it goes along to drive the point of
sure.
to drive the story. It would if everybody had been as smart as John McClane, the movie would have been over in 45 minutes.
Yeah, you gotta accept some movie logic with these things. You can nitpick, but in the end, the reason why is because the story ends right there. If certain things don't happen in certain ways, but
and I could have accepted it or been more okay with it if it had just been maybe that dispatcher that is getting snippy.
Yeah, I forgot about them.
Getting snippy with John McClane when he comes over the emergency frequency.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, this is an emergency channel, sir. If you have a problem, call 911."
Right, yeah.
And all that. I can sort of see that one. However, I was doing a little studying on the subject, and it's like, well, really, who would be pranking them on Christmas Eve? It's not like this is going to be some child's prank. This is probably going to be a real situation on Christmas Eve when somebody's coming over the emergency channel. He doesn't sound like a pranker, but of course, you have to, like you said, you have to accept some movie logic.
Yeah. So I guess Willis, he wasn't considered the action movie guy. Kind of like Michael Keaton when they got him for Batman. It was a very odd choice to most people. He was doing Moonlighting, which was a television show. I think it's kind of a romantic comedy kind of show. And I never knew this. I guess he was still doing a lot of his moonlighting in the day and Die Hard at night. And it got to a point where Bruce was so exhausted, he actually had them amp up like Al, the jerk guy, I already forgot his name, Argyle, Thornburg's parts to take some of the load off him. So they actually kind of developed them and did more with them to help, give him a little bit of a break. I never knew that. That probably should have been trivia.
Well, you were talking about in the trivia section all the big time action stars that turned this role down.
Right.
And, in another sense, if you think about it, maybe that's another reason why that character was the everyman character so well.
Yeah.
It's because Bruce Willis didn't have the experience of being Mr. Action Hero Stud.
Yeah.
Coming in and all that. With that kind of a rapport, he came into the role with a fresh look at it.
So once he starts talking to the cops, he's using the same radio, the radios that they brought in. Did you ever wonder, okay, wouldn't clearly the terrorists still be listening into him talking to the cops, and would the cops be able to hear the terrorists talking to each other? They never say anything about, like, hey, this channel's compromised, we need to stop communicating with them. They still all talk to each other through them. Al will talk to McClane on the radio, and then once Gruber finds out that who his wife is, he talks to him on the same radio. They never show him, like, change the channel or nothing. Wouldn't you think that would help validate to the one cop, the detective, that McClane is really not with them, that he's not messing with them, that he's not one of them trying to, pull the wool over their eyes? You think that would, something like that they would be listening in.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't really thought about, but I think you're right. Again, movie logic.
Yeah. Okay, like here's one. McClane, toward the beginning of the movie, he comes in, and the security guard says, type in the name. There's only one group in the building. He says, oh, they're on the 24th floor. It's the big Christmas party. Why would he even say, oh, type the name so you can find out what floor she's on? It was just to the point to show that she is now using her maiden name. It was just a plot device, it served no purpose other than that. It makes no sense if it was in the real world. And they do stuff like that. Like, here's another one. Like, how did Carl survive? He gets all chained up. He's swung across, smashed into the wall, and they even show when McClane is driving the hostages back out because he knew the roof was going to blow. He's hanging there lifeless. But then yet at the end for that last big hurrah, he's managed to survive, and he's making it look like he's a hostage coming out. It's just movie logic. That's you got to turn off your brain a little bit.
That was another thing too that I was thinking of about movie logic, where basically at the end of the movie, finally here's John McClane reunited with his wife. He just saved her from near death, and he's willing to, and don't get me wrong, I know he had a lot of gratitude and owed a big debt to Al, but I think I would have been more interested in sitting there and holding on to my wife a little bit longer, and stuff. But then, no, he's got, hey, let me introduce you to this guy, Al.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I've heard before where, that's like, well, soldiers, sometimes they're off at war, you hear, and the whole time they want to get home to their wives, but then they go through basically like life and death with these other guys. It's like sometimes once they get home, they keep feeling guilty, or they feel like they should be still over there doing their thing, I can kind of buy that a little bit, but I want to talk about McClane by himself before he really got Al involved. I think that was actually better. Or at least that's the part I enjoy more. I thought it was more interesting when he was on his own with no backup of any kind. Just picking off these guys one at a time with stealth. I don't know, I just enjoyed those scenes more.
Yeah, that was cool. I enjoyed too just his own the way he talked, his sort of little bit of humoristic comments here and there. I thought that was actually a great portrayal of maybe like a New York cop, what you would stereotype or imagine, a New York cop would be like, kind of have that tude, to him.
Yeah, I was reading where they said Bruce Willis and John Tiernan, whatever.
The director?
Yeah, they kind of actually figured out a character development later in the film, as opposed to knowing it. They kind of found out who he was and kind of had to stick it in there toward the end. It wasn't pre-planned to kind of find out his regrets and his various things he was going through, which maybe would have changed how he was if they could have had it down right at the first time. I don't know if that made it better or worse, but
well, that's very interesting. You would say, I find it very fascinating, given how much this movie, they had so much trouble finding the right guy. They had so much trouble, getting the right feel for some of these characters. A lot of improvisation, while they were shooting and making changes on the fly.
Yeah,
it really is fascinating and amazing how great this movie turned out, given all the nonsense that was kind of going on in the background.
Yeah,
this could have been a real, a big mess.
And what's funny is this movie is copied to death, like so many movies. I actually wrote down a few. I mean, you got Speed, Olympus Has Fallen, White House Down, Air Force One, Under Siege, The Rock. And I'm not saying all those movies are bad. Mostly, I'd be talking about Under Siege or The Rock and Air Force One. Not saying they're bad movies, but still, they kind of copied this formula a bit. Most of them unsuccessfully, but.
Yeah, I hear that even that there's a little bit of a joke about some of those movies, that they often get called.
Yeah.
Die Hard
on a bus is Speed.
Yeah,
Die Hard
on an island is The Rock. Die Hard on a plane is Air Force One.
Yeah.
Die Hard in the White House is White House Down, and Olympus Has Fallen.
Yeah.
So that's kind of humorous.
So, music. They use Beethoven's Ode to Joy, which is kind of interesting. You wouldn't think, at least at the time with these action movies of the 80s, to use like classical Beethoven and other things like that. I just thought it was kind of clever and cool because it kind of makes this classical music seem. I'm not saying like classical music's bad, but they make it almost seems cool. It's funny to hear classical music and think of action scenes. I think, or especially Beethoven. Specifically.
It is funny, but at the same time, if you think about it, the Beethoven's music at his time, that was the rock and roll of that era.
Yeah, I guess so.
And his music is quite thrilling. The highs and the lows.
Yeah.
Personally, I mean, even though I'm not the biggest classical music fan in the world, but I enjoy some Beethoven here and there, and that was really fitting for this movie.
Yeah, classical music will definitely give it a more timeless quality. A lot of these 80s movies, they'll use a lot of synths and various things, and it shows its date, and it just doesn't hold up as well. In fact, I heard that originally they wanted to use disco music with Star Wars, which, how terrible would that have been?
Yeah, that would have been really bad.
And I don't think it could have held up. It would have been held in such high regard today if they would have.
No, probably not. But then again, we know George Lucas.
He would have. He would have changed it.
He would have changed it.
And I probably would have agreed with that one. But at that point, I think even, not to go off on Star Wars, but if you had that movie always be disco and then they decided to put this big epic score, I don't know if it would have been as memorable because it's new. It's a new thing. And even though it sounds better, it wouldn't have had that, like, the Star Wars theme. Like, you hear it, you love it. It just wouldn't have worked. It was good they got it right the first time.
I totally agree with you there.
Okay, so moving on from music.
Yeah, I think another point, too, that we haven't touched on yet is, another character who is so absolutely annoying. You almost wish it was him that was the hostage that got killed. And that is the character played by William Atherton, the reporter Richard Thornburg. Which, that actor is so good at playing characters that you just don't like.
So Dave and I did do an episode on Ghostbusters, but it was one of our ones we had to trash. But in it, he's in it as a jerk. And he was talking about how, at least for that movie, people gave him such a hard time when they would see him on the streets. I mean, it's a character. You know, you got to have a bad guy. You got to have a punk. You know, it's just funny to me people took it so to heart about him.
But, you know, at the same time, I mean, I guess you could say that shows that he's really good at what he does, so to speak. But seriously, every time I've ever seen him in anything, and this is probably because of Ghostbusters, it was a movie that I grew up on. Literally, like, I swallowed that movie whole. I grew up on it.
Mm-hmm. You already had that reputation in your head?
He's got that actor. I could see him in any role, on any show. He could play, you know, the Pope, or the greatest man who ever lived, and I would think, oh, what a scumbag. When I rewatched Die Hard for doing this podcast, as soon as I saw him, I looked up and I was like, oh, Walter Peck.
Yeah. So it didn't hit me till later. Like, this is basically, if this was a television episode, this would be a bottle episode. Are you familiar with that at all?
No.
In television, a bottle episode is typically a way to save money. So instead of having your characters go to some other location, either a real location outside or build a new set, you save money by using pre-existing set pieces. So like in Star Trek, for instance, it would be an episode where they never leave the ship. Obviously that's not the reason here, but it's still kind of like a bottle episode. Everything for the most part takes place in the building, and it's kind of interesting. But in this, it adds a sense of I don't know if you would say being like claustrophobic, but like you're a sense of being trapped. He's trapped there. But then he, I think, also would stay there anyway, even if he could get out, because of his wife and a sense of duty. Even, again, if his wife wasn't there. We talked about that already. But it's just interesting to me, like, how most of it takes place in this building.
Yeah, even though it all takes place, though, in just one building, you don't get the sense, like, in some movies, where they just, very few movies, but there are a few, where they just literally all take place in like one room or one apartment. This is a gigantic building that they're.
Oh
that
yeah,
they're
I'm not saying like it's a bad thing. I think it actually works well for adding. Well, it's kind of like Alien. You talked about Alien earlier. Pretty much the whole movie just about takes place on that ship, which adds to it when you are being hunted in an area. I can't go any further. I only have so far to go in any direction, like John McClane does. Yeah, he has several floors he can go to, but he is trapped, and I think that adds a sense of tension to it.
Also, another thing about it being, you using as much existing things as they already have available to save money. Mm-hmm. From what I understand, some of the movie actually was filmed around Christmas time, even on Christmas Eve. That way they wouldn't have to do anything extra to give it the right look or feel around the building. Well,
they were in L.A., though. So maybe some decorations, but, there wouldn't be, like, here we're in Michigan where we think of Christmas, typically think of snow and stuff. They wouldn't have that. L.A. is going to look the same all year round. So, I wouldn't see that as being a big problem for them.
No, I wasn't saying it's a problem. I think that's really cool, though, to know that they actually filmed on Christmas Eve.
But I'm saying, like, I don't see why they would need to, because pretty much it's going to look the same.
Yeah, but they had Christmas trees and stuff like that already set up, in some of those rooms, Christmas decorations and things like that, that they didn't have to add. It was already there because they were filming around Christmas time.
I know,
and the movie takes place around Christmas.
I know, like I said, most of the shots are used in the actual 20th Century Fox building of theirs, but the main floor where the Christmas party is a set, I guess.
Okay.
That place is a set, and that was actually on a movie studio, but most of the other stuff is actually in the building.
Oh, okay.
So, did I talk about like my favorite parts? Was more the stealth parts where he's sneaking around in the elevator.
You touched on that a little bit.
Okay. I don't know. I just feel it was much more interesting when he's on his own, sneaking through the air ducts and, peeking through the stairwells and having to get to the next or whatever door before if they're coming. I just found that I like that.
One of my favorite parts is the part where he first makes his presence known on the radio. Sorry, Hans, wrong answer. Maybe we'll try again next time in the next round when the stakes are higher or something.
Right.
I love that attitude. Especially at that point in time, he's got the upper hand on them. He knows so much more about them because he's been collecting all these little pieces of information by listening, by beating up their guys, and then digging around in their stuff. Then he's got this radio. They don't know he's out there yet, and all of a sudden, boom, he comes over the radio, and he is definitely the fly in their ointment, so to speak.
Yes. So have you ever heard that some people were saying they thought that the security guard should have been a mole? The first security guard, when they first come in, they killed him, remember? And then their guy took the uniform. I actually think that might have been kind of cool if you find out that the reason how they knew certain things is because they had a mole go in there, pose as an employee, and kind of start staking things out, finding out patterns, finding out, where things are and this and that, how the security system works. I think that kind of would have added a nice little layer to it.
They actually had thought about doing that?
Well, I don't know if they thought about doing that, but I've heard other people say that they should have, or that would have been a nice touch, and I would have to agree with that. I think that could have really added a nice extra layer to it. I don't know.
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
It could have. I guess I'd never really thought of that, and I certainly hadn't heard that before.
I just thought it was kind of cool. So I want to talk about Al's story arc. So they built up this little thing with him about how he pulled his gun out one time. He accidentally kills a kid, and he has this thing. He's on just a regular beat where he's not doing anything heavy because he feels he can't pull his gun out at anyone again. And then, of course, you have the end where Carl miraculously survives and is going to kill McClane, and he pulls his gun out and kills him. Do you feel that worked? Was it kind of cheesy? How do you feel about that?
It definitely kind of had a bit of a cheesy, hero end of the movie hero type feel. But I guess it wasn't so bad. It wasn't super ridiculous or a super big suspension of belief. I know you said you really didn't care too much for Al.
Well, it's not that I disliked him. I just felt certain parts he was a little annoying. I didn't dislike him. Just some things he did. And said,
I really liked Al. And I think I liked some of those parts where, he was like, "Oh no, you're shooting out the lights, duh,"
Yeah, see, that was the thing I didn't like. I don't know.
It was like he was the only guy who had the brains to realize that's what was going to happen.
And I think that's what made him feel one-dimensional to me, that they had all these other guys be idiots, and then, I don't know, he's like, for some reason, the only voice of reason. I just felt that was a little silly.
But if you think about it, anybody who works, at almost any job, just a regular laborer, they're constantly being hassled by their bosses who they don't really actually do the work themselves, yet they think they know the best way to do everything. And really, 9 times out of 10, the guy who does the job from 9 to 5 every day knows the best way to do this
I
stuff.
got you, but it's just saying none of the other cops, none of the other SWAT team guys seem to have any good ideas or good sense on anything. It seems like they only wanted him to be kind of that hero.
Yeah, and that was annoying. I didn't find that didn't make Al annoying, I don't feel like, but
okay.
It made everybody else annoying. That they weren't picking up on anything, that they just seemed like these mindless drones who couldn't do anything right, couldn't get anything right, were constantly screwing up and making bad decisions. I actually was reading that a lot of police officers really, after the movie was out and seen, Reginald Vel Johnson, I believe that's how you say the actor who played Al, his name.
I believe so.
A lot of police officers came up and they really appreciated his portrayal of that role because they felt it was that good.
Kind of a sidestep. Do you realize how many times this guy has played a cop?
Yeah.
So you got Ghostbusters. He was a cop. Obviously, Die Hard 2, he had a brief part in. Family Matters. There could be more, but I don't know. It's just kind of funny. He's kind of always a cop.
Yeah, I think it's pretty funny. And actually, I found out that he actually reprises his role as Al in an episode of a television show. And I can't think of the name of that show right now. But yeah, and he plays the character in Family Matters, which I was joking around the other day with somebody, and I said his name was Carl Alfred Winslow, as if they're the same character.
Right. Yeah.
But I was also reading. Don't ask me the stats. Don't ask me to name them all. But I was reading that they say Bruce Willis has played more cop characters than anybody else in the history of film.
Can you back that up with stats?
Well, as a matter of fact, since you're pulling my arm, let's think about this here. He's been John McClane, the cop, in Die Hard, Die Hard 2, With a Vengeance, Live Free or Die Hard, and I think there's one more Die Hard movie, isn't there? Or there's going to be.
A Good Day to Die Hard.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. And then he's also been a cop in The Last Boy Scout, Striking Distance, Sin City, Hostage, 16 Blocks, Surrogates, and Cop Out. So he has played an awful lot of cop roles. Right up, maybe the only other guy who's right up there with him is somebody like Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, a lot of the maybe not the most different cop roles, because a lot of those he's John McClane, but still he's played a cop in a lot of different movies.
Okay. Yeah. I gotcha.
And that which is also funny. Even though he plays a cop in a lot of different things, so does Reginald Vel Johnson. If you think about it, he's been a cop in several different things.
Yeah.
And that's just a kind of a funny coincidence there between the two.
Yeah, I guess when I think of Bruce Willis, I usually don't think of just a cop or mostly cops. But some of those movies I haven't seen. I know of them, but I haven't seen them.
I'll be honest, I haven't seen almost any of them besides the Die Hard movies.
I've seen parts of 16 Blocks and I don't know.
I've seen Sin City.
So let's talk about its reception at the time and its legacy.
Sure. Die Hard, when it opened, it came out first in a limited release in 21 theaters, and then wide release just about a week later. And the critical reception was very positive. British film critic Mark Kermode basically expressed admiration for the film and said that it was an exciting setup of cowboys and Indians in the towering inferno. Of course, Roger Ebert, who I always consider to be a little bit of a curmudgeon, I think he's just generally kind of negative on movies that I wind up being really a big fan of.
Okay.
Roger Ebert gave it a less than flattering review, rating it only 2 stars, and his big criticism was the stupidity of the deputy police chief character, and said that all by himself, he successfully undermines the last half of the movie. Now, I didn't think it was that bad, but
is that out of a
noticeable.
4 or 5 star possibility?
I can't remember if it's out of a 4 or 5.
Yeah, it's funny because I guess the Towering Inferno was an inspiration for John McTiernan in the whole being trapped in one building thing.
Right.
Of course, they did take a lot of it from the novel Nothing Lasts Forever. Is that what I said it was called?
Yeah, I think so. And the detective.
Yeah, the detective was the sequel.
I've never seen either of them, so I really couldn't say for sure.
I think they only made a movie out of the detective, but
gotcha.
technically they're books. But anyway, I'm sorry.
No, anyway, now if you look at sites like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, which go back and look at reviews from the time and then sort of get a compilation score.
Okay.
From Rotten Tomatoes, it gets a 92% approval rating from 64 critics, with an average rating of 8.4 out of 10. And they say its many imitators and sequels have never come close to matching the taut thrills of the definitive holiday action classic. And I think that's a pretty good rating and description of it myself.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the legacy of the movie, I mean, obviously it spawned, 4 sequels, right? I'm correct, 4 sequels?
Let's see.
2,
Die Hard 2.
3,
Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Live Free and Die
Live Free
Hard.
or Die Hard, and now A Good Day to Die Hard. So yeah, 4 sequels, 5 total movies.
And, it's been in, pieces of it have been enshrined in museums. Like Bruce Willis's shirt
Yeah, I heard about that.
was put in the National Museum of American History at the
That's
Smithsonian
funny.
Museum.
Wow.
It's a huge cultural
I just think
icon.
it's funny, of all things to choose from, the shirt he wore. It's just funny.
Well, I mean, it must have been memorable to somebody.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess what else really can you think of from this movie? I mean, to use. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I guess so. Unless you could somehow get like a model of the Nakatomi building or something like that.
Yeah.
So, as far as other legacy accolades, Die Hard was listed as number 39 on the American Film Institute's 100 Years, 100 Thrills, which looked at the most heart-pounding films of the last 100 years.
Okay.
That was in 2001.
And it got what position?
Number 39.
Okay.
Hans Gruber was listed at number 46 on their 100 Years, 100 Heroes and Villains list. And also
Number 6?
Number 46.
Oh wow, I can hear. Okay. Continue. Sorry.
Now, in the hero category, John McClane was nominated, but it doesn't sound like he actually made it. So it doesn't sound like which is so weird to me, because I think he may be one of the best action characters ever.
Well, because he's so different. If you look at like Commando, they had him doing like Terminator stuff, even though he's just supposed to be a regular guy. He's carrying a huge log, and there's one point where there's like a fence and there's like a chain going around. He literally just like rips it off, and like a car gets flipped over. He just like pushes it back over, and then like the one scene where he unnecessarily just rips the car seat out so that he can lay down and be inconspicuous, which makes no sense as well. But like, 80s action stars were like practically like, Superman or something. They could do this ridiculous stuff. And again, that goes back to what we're talking about. Bruce Willis was more of a real person.
Yeah.
The way they put him,
I think so.
where he's even at one point he's doing something, the guy totally catches him off guard. He puts the gun right to him. With the big fight there, and the fact that he's not just like killing these guys with the greatest of ease. Like, I mean, these guys are fighting back and getting hits on him, and he's struggling to get them. He had to use a chain to get that one guy. I mean, it seems like that guy pretty much had him until he was able to wrap the chain around and throw him off the staircase. But yeah, he's more like a real guy. It seems more believable that what's happening is more plausible. It's
And I think that is one of the huge factors in why this movie has remained so timeless.
Oh, absolutely.
So classic. Why its legacy is so great. The fact that anybody would look at another film and say, well, this is, Die Hard on an Island, or, Die Hard in this or that. I mean, that means that Die Hard is the standard there.
So let's talk about its sequels briefly. What you said you just rewatched too?
I just rewatched Die
What'd you
Hard
think?
2. It was a little less.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the best way I can put it. It was a little less.
Yeah.
Just because in this movie, in part 2, John McClane's character seems a little more comfortable being in a bad situation. I believe. He doesn't seem as off guard, as scared as he was in the other one. Obviously he puts himself in some pretty harrowing positions, like when he almost gets run over by the airplane as he's coming up the grate from the runway.
Yeah.
Obviously he's scared when he almost gets run over, But for the most part, he just seems like he's like dusting himself off and all right, well, we're just going to keep on going.
Yeah,
at it.
I think the actual. Biggest, okay, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. But the biggest thing that to me where he felt scared in that one was mostly just feeling scared for his wife because his wife was up in one of those airplanes.
I think with Die Hard 2, the actual idea of terrorists taking over an airport where they're holding planes hostage where they can't see to land, the idea of it is a better idea than how it was actually executed.
Yeah.
Because the janitor guy or the maintenance custodial guy, whatever he is, he was kind of annoying. But that other guy, the black guy, the
like the general or colonel or whatever.
He was like the number 2 guy.
Yeah.
He was really annoying and not a very good actor. I'm not saying that was the biggest problem with the movie, but it just, I don't know, it just kind of takes me out of it a little bit, and it just wasn't as great of a movie. I'm not saying it's terrible, but you're right, it can't hold a candle to the first one.
No.
But I do think Die Hard 3 with a Vengeance felt a little more like
a true sequel.
In a lot of ways, because he seemed more like that real guy again. I mean, he was even on the wing of the airplane in the second one. Remember, I can't remember how he got up there.
And that ridiculous... he got up there because he rode in on a news helicopter.
Oh, that's right.
Jumped out onto the wing of the plane. And
that's
then when he figures out that there's a release to let the fuel out of that engine.
Yeah.
And so finally, the bad guy kicks him off the wing as he's unlocking that fuel door. Well, all of a sudden it opens, spilling all that gas, and then in the middle of the winter, snow everywhere, wind howling.
Yeah.
And, yes, I know it's spewing gasoline, but I really don't believe that once the plane got that far away and even partially off the ground, that John McClane's going to be able to pull out his Zippo, light it, ignite the jet fuel, and it would chase the plane down the runway and catch it in midair and cause it to explode. Well, I just don't buy it.
It's like, here's my thought. What was he planning on doing? That kind of worked out well for him, that as he, got knocked off the plane, the fuel started dumping or whatever.
Yeah, he pulled the...
Yeah, but he didn't... It seemed like he didn't have that idea at the time.
He didn't have a plan.
It just kind of happened. So what was he intending on doing? Yeah, he put his jacket in the flap so it couldn't, lift up. That was his goal, but it didn't seem like it was doing enough to stop them. So at one point... If they wouldn't have come out there, it's like the plane's going to start taking off, and he's
on the wing.
Yeah, and that wouldn't have lasted long. But
no.
But yeah, I think Die Hard 3 seemed a lot more realistic with how the first one set him up to be. I know a lot of people don't apparently like that one.
It's interesting that you would say that because I was reading some of the opposite.
Oh, really?
That it's actually considered to be one of the better movie sequels.
Okay. Yeah, I heard a lot of people didn't like it, and then I know a lot of people also hate on Live Free or Die Hard, which I liked it pretty well. I'm not saying it's the best, but...
I've only seen it once or twice, and back pretty close to when it came out. Mm-hmm. From my memories, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But just again, from my memories, I can sort of see how it's a little dated. It was kind of that... There was a thing going on at the time where it was like a lot of hacker movies are coming out. Mm-hmm. And, it had a lot to do with electronics and computers and... that to me that just seems like so, mid to late 2000s of a story.
I feel you, but I mean, a lot of people talk about how it ends up on the jet. He's literally on a jet, and the pilot jettisons out, and then he's just kind of, doing that thing. I get it. It's a little far fetched, but that whole movie, it seems like it didn't carry on the more realistic scenarios. It was a little more far-fetched. That's when the whole Jeep, remember when he has that Jeep falling down the elevator shaft?
Yeah.
I don't remember that part. And it's a little more far-fetched of a movie. I can just kind of roll with it and enjoy it for what it is, but it's...
One of those fun summer action movies.
Now, the fifth one, I've only seen it once.
I've never seen it.
I would be willing to watch it again, but at least in the fourth one, he does get a little banged up, and he starts, he's bloody, and that one, there's one part where he's in a Jeep or something, and it tumbles 100 times, and literally he just gets right out. He doesn't seem like he's hit his head. He does it with bloody. I mean, literally just gets out and
he does this every morning.
Yeah, exactly. It was ridiculous. So I heard
I
that
get up every morning, eat my pancakes, and roll a Jeep 20 flips,
yeah,
every day.
yeah, just to stay sharp. But I heard they want to do one more, and one of the possible plots would be, I don't know how well this would work. It would be, first of all, he says it wants to be the last one with his involvement, and it would be where he bookends it. Bruce Willis is as John McClane. He is talking about like one of his first things when he first became a cop, and then it kind of flashes back to him as a young guy with whatever. I don't know how well that would work. The only thing I think could be interesting is if, let's say, basically he encounters a villain now, kind of like his Khan, for instance, and then basically he was to flashback of when he first met this guy and had an encounter. Like basically this guy, was his first nemesis or something, but that wouldn't work because it seems like Hans is kind of his first real nemesis outside of just, punks that he's arrested for robbing a liquor store or, whatever. So I just don't know how well that would work because it seems like that would make the first movie, it would cheapen it. Because this is a regular cop who encounters terrorists
for the very first
time, out of his element.
He's never had anything this
exactly.
big.
So I just don't know how that would work.
I wouldn't be very pleased with that kind of a script or that kind of a storyline.
But that was just one thing I heard. I don't know if that's what they're actually going to go through with. But
if you're listening, don't do it.
Yeah, no one's listening. But like, other than that, I don't know what they could do. Like, I fear they would try to just reboot it or prequel it as, John McClane, he's fresh out of the police academy and here is a beat cop, I don't know. I just don't know where they could go with that. I would like to see one more good movie with him all the way through, kind of redeem the last one and hang it up. But I just don't know. I don't have any good ideas for them.
Honestly, I'm not even
sure. They
sure.
call me all the time with ideas, and I've ran out, guys. Yeah.
I'm not even sure if, don't get me wrong. I love the Die Hard franchise. I love John McClane as a character. I just really don't even know if they need to make another one. I mean, really, how many ridiculous, crazy situations can one cop get into in his life that are worth making a movie
I
over?
understand, yeah. I just think seeing how the last one was so bad.
I've never seen it. I can't comment.
I mean, like I said, I'd be willing to watch it one more time. I've only seen it the one time, but it was bad. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else they could do with it, but it would be kind of nice to do one more thing, send him off right, but I don't know how. I mean, I thought it was interesting because
re-release the first one for a limited run in the theater. That's the best way to send John McClane
sometimes,
out.
yeah. I mean, I think sometimes there are certain movies that is the best they could do. Like, people talking about The Goonies, wanting to do a sequel. Why? What can you do with that? I don't want to see their kids do anything, and I don't want to see them do anything. You just can't recapture that. It's a one-off, and there's nothing wrong with that, except re-release it like maybe for its 30th or 40th or whatever in the theaters again. That would be cool. But other than that, I don't see adding anything else to the story. And Die Hard, I don't know. I want it, but I want it only if they can do it right, and it doesn't look like they can do it right with what's been happening lately with the last one.
Unfortunately, a lot of movies don't do it right when they come back for one final run. Yeah, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they find one more gold nugget in the mine.
Can you got an example on that? Just curious. Can I put you on the spot like that?
No, you cannot.
Okay. I was just curious if you had something in mind.
I no.
Okay. Yeah. Can I think of anything?
I'm about done.
Very well. Well, thank you all for listening. You can catch us on Facebook.
That's right.
Yes. You want to tell them how to get there, John?
I would love to tell them how to get there.
I would appreciate if you did that.
Now, you want to go to your computer.
Okay.
Open up your web browser.
Now, is this for Windows? Which Windows are we on?
We are on Windows. I'm personally using a Windows RT model right now. I think you have Windows 10.
I do.
But they all have a web browser.
Oh. Okay.
And so and you can have multiple web browsers.
Are you left clicking or right clicking?
I just kind of randomly click.
We're going to make this way harder than it needs to be.
Absolutely. That's the
Okay,
best way
so
to do it.
once you click the web browser, you got to put like www dot Facebook.
You know, you can probably do something like
Okay,
that.
let's
I mean,
see.
you could even
Let's
start
see what-
off with like HTTP.
Oh, okay. Does that help? Does that make it like get there faster? or
No,
something?
because typically they're already set up to sort
Okay.
of take you through that part.
Okay.
It kind of makes it a little bit easier.
All right. Yeah.
But you want to go to www.facebook.com / escape podcast
You typing slash?
16. Well, there's a slash button with a slash symbol.
Is it like leaning to the left or the right or?
It's sort of leaning to like the rock and roll side. Like Slash from Guns N' Roses.
Okay.
So
All right.
so yeah, and it looks like a guitar handle, like the neck of a guitar, sticking up sort of sideways. That's the slash right there.
Oh, okay.
That's Slash's slash.
Okay.
So yeah, Facebook.com / escape podcast 16.
I know they can get us on escapepodcast16@gmail.com.
Is that what they can get you there?
They can get me just good old fashioned email.
They can't get me there unless they get it to you first. Then you can get it to me.
I could forward it to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd have to walk me through it, I think. But it's
maybe stroll you through it.
yeah. I
Okay.
mean, I might just print it up and put it in an envelope and mail it to you. And,
You know what you could do is you could just like
read it over the phone. Like, is that possible?
I was gonna suggest crumple it up and set it on fire, and it'll be a smoke signal.
Is that how that works?
I
you
think-
type it and then you light it on fire
I think-
and it
I
just
think
spells
so.
it out?
I think that's how the ancients did it.
Okay.
And also, you can either listen to this on iTunes. I don't know if you're listening to this on iTunes.
iTunes?
Or on Podomatic's
Podomatic,
website.
yeah. And I think with both of those, you just search the Escape Podcast.
16.
16. How foolish of me to forget that.
Yes,
The extra
because there are several other miscellaneous escape podcasts floating
Losers.
around out there in
Idiots.
cyberspace.
All right.
So go check them out on Facebook. Give them a like, give them a share, send them a comment. Tell them what you think. If you think we're ridiculous, tell us we're ridiculous. If you have some constructive criticism, we'd love to hear it. Who knows? Maybe the changes that you suggest may be incorporated in the show. Might even give you a shout out for your help.
Good. You never know.
Well, once again, I am John,
I'm Josh.
and it has been a pure pleasure to be here with you, Josh. Thanks for having me back on the Escape
Thank you.
Podcast.
Get your suit on and get out of here.
All right.
All right. Good day. Good riddance. You okay?
Boy, that went off the rails.
It really did. That went on ridiculously long. Just see why I write things down. You write things down.
Oh, man.
All you need is one of the sound effects of when you first had to log on to the internet with the phone cord.
Oh, dial up. Dial up, yeah.
You can use your America Online or your Prodigy.
You've got mail.
Oh, man.
Open up Netscape Navigator.
Netscape Navigator. Net Zero.